Hi everyone, and welcome back to Living Phase 2, our channel that's dedicated to everything related to living your best Phase 2 life. Today we're going to talk about one of our favorite subjects, and that is cruising. So we're going to, this is the second part of a series of videos we're doing, trying to answer basic questions about cruising, especially if you're taking your first cruise.
So today we are going to cover all of the basics of booking your first cruise, be it with a local travel agent or online. We're going to cover it for you, friends. So grab that number 2 pencil and welcome to Living Phase 2.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nancy, and we're empty nesters striving to live life to the fullest.
Our goal is to give you the best hints, tips, and tricks so you can live your best Phase 2 life.
And in today's video, we're going to cover some more of the cruise basics. We're going to cover booking your first cruise. So we actually have a previous video, which we will link in the description below, our Cruising 101 class, which talked about what is included in your cruise. But today we're going to talk about booking your cruise.
Absolutely. So the first thing you need to think about, we're going to cover several different topics related to what you need to think about in booking your cruise. And the number one is you need to think about your budget. Obviously, most of us don't have unlimited funds to go and travel all the time and spend whatever we want. And to be honest, it doesn't do you any good to look at Silver Sea cruises if you have a Carnival budget. So determine what you're willing to spend on your cruise. Have an idea what you're willing to spend for this vacation, and note that, because the costs will add up surprisingly fast. So to give you an example, we recently took the least expensive cruise we could find. We're going to do another video on that to show you what it's like, but it was a $99 3-day cruise that went to the Bahamas, and it was on Royal Caribbean, so it stopped at their Perfect Day at Coco Cay and then returned. And so we think about it, it's $99 per person, but in the end, the cost ended up being, so that's $198 for 2 people, and then gratuities, which are prepaid, was $98. And then taxes, port fees, and expenses were $200.45. The taxes, port fees, and other expenses were actually more than the cruise fare for this one, for a total price of $494.50. So our $99 cruise that you would have seen advertised in an email or a pop-up ad actually ended up costing us basically $500 for 3 days. Now, we will say $500 for 3 days and everything that we got with this is a steal. I mean, that's an amazing bargain. But really do understand that when you see those hook you in prices, they're for an inside cabin, and they're per person for the cruise, and they're going to be the cheapest possible available. And quite often that'll be for what's called a guarantee cabin, which means you don't get to pick your cabin. They will pick it for you in the classification that you book. But just realize that there are some costs that are going to be more than you're going to think.
Those hidden costs. Another example that we have for you is we recently booked a 7-day cruise. It was $850 per person, and by the time we doubled that, added our port fees, gratuities, and everything, the cost for the 2 of us was $2,434. So that just gives you a couple of examples of how the costs really do add up. So, and as we've said in previous videos, cruising is really not all-inclusive. There are additional fees that get added on. There's things that you can do to bring those fees down, but things that you need to look at are just something like the beverage package. Your basic just soda beverage package could run $9 a day, whereas an deluxe alcohol beverage package could run up to $100 a day. So that's something that's going to be added on if you choose to. That is your choice. Other things to consider that'll be added on that you need to consider for your budget are excursions. Some of the least expensive excursions are going to run about $25 per person per day on up. And I mean, and they can go way high, like $1,000. What we see on average, though, friends, is $100 per person per day is what our typical excursion
per
cost
day
is.
you're in port.
Per day you're in port, yes.
Right.
Because you're going to have some sea days there, too.
Yeah, but we've had some fantastic shore excursions that have been $39.
Sure, we have. Absolutely.
And I think probably the most we've ever spent is maybe a couple $100 on a shore excursion, but as Nancy said, You know, if you're going to go to the falls in Argentina, that's like a $2,000 excursion. You know, so they can get crazy, but normal Caribbean type excursions,
Right.
around $50,
Right.
$75.
We've mentioned in the past things of including the specialty dining. That if you don't order the specialty dining package, you can still go to those restaurants. They're going to run around $50 per day per person. And other things that would be that you need to include in your budget are things like spa treatments if you want those, or if you do any gambling. Those are at an additional charge. Some activities on the ship, virtual reality type activities, things that are a little more
like escape room.
Yeah, extravagant type activities. Those will be at an additional charge as well. And also don't forget to include in your budget items for shopping and souvenirs, because you may want to pick up a few things while you're either on the ship at their shopping or at port.
That's right. And so you can see why this is the first of the subjects we're covering here. Setting your budget is critical. You don't want to get yourself into a point where you get all excited. You think, oh, look at this this great price of $500 a person for the cruise, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute, this cruise has cost me $4,000. You know, so you do just need to consider all those add-ons and add them up, and just make sure that you've got the budget to support it.
Correct. The next thing for your budget that you want to consider is what type of cabin that you want. Your least expensive are going to be your interior rooms that don't have any windows. So you're really enclosed in a box, which I don't care for as much. The next step up would just be a cabin with a window, then moving on to a cabin with a balcony. And then you can continue on to some really extravagant suites
Sky's
that
the
cost
limit.
tens of thousands, tens of thousands of dollars per person to stay in some of those really luxury suites. So my personal favorite is the balcony. I treasure my time sitting out on the balcony with my cup of coffee.
Right. And the important thing to consider when you're budgeting is that is really going to be the major component, the major driver of the cost of your cruise. Your cheapest is going to be the interior cabin that you mentioned, and then on up from there. So that's the first thing you got to decide. You set your budget, and then you start looking at what type of cabin can fit into that budget.
And by upgrading your cabin, you are also going to be increasing your gratuity fees as well. So keep that in mind.
Because in general, gratuity fees are around 18 to 20% of whatever that fee is.
Correct.
$100 cabin's $20. A $1,000 cabin's $200 in gratuity, so you need to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, the next topic we're going to cover related to booking your first cruise is a bit of a controversial topic, and that's travel agent or no travel agent. And we will flat out say right in the front, if you've really not done a lot of traveling, if you have never booked a cruise before, we're going to say use a travel agent. And in fact, even as you become a more experienced traveler, there's really very little downside to using a travel agent. It doesn't cost you anymore. Quite often they will have better deals, maybe a special deal or an allocation from the cruise line. They may have onboard credit, money that you get when you get on the ship to spend that'll be applied that maybe you don't get booking directly with the cruise ship or the cruise line, excuse me. But that said, if you're super comfortable and just like to have total control of your vacation, then you certainly can book it yourself. Millions and millions of people do. We've done it that way many times. We sometimes go back and forth between using our travel agent and booking ourselves, depending on how simple the trip is or what we're doing. But it is really good to have, especially if you're new to cruising, that person that can help steer you in the right direction.
That said, do your own research. We've told you before, research. There's a lot of great blogs out there, great articles for you to read. There's some wonderful YouTubers that give out so much helpful information. We'll listen to Lolita Loco, Dawn's Family Vacations, Tips for Travelers are some of the YouTube channels that we watched that give us very valuable information on cruising and other travels.
Yeah, one of the things I like about some of the content creators we just mentioned versus maybe just going on Facebook or other social media, which by the way we do look at as well, quite often when you get on social media, you find that the person who's posting had a bad experience. That's why they're posting. They're saying, hey, did anybody else get a bad steak in the main dining room?
Yes.
And what you don't see from those posts on Facebook are the millions and millions of people who traveled that had a wonderful experience.
Right.
So really what we're saying is maybe everything on the internet's not true. But
Or it's skewed.
yes,
It's just skewed.
it can often be skewed to where, it can almost get scary when you see some of the social media posts out there and some of the, I mean, I hate to say it, but fear mongering. So look across a broad spectrum of content.
Right.
We hope this content is being very helpful for you.
Yes.
And that we're trying to give you the plain truth with simply the basics. And if it is, hey, guess what? We'd like you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, follow us, especially as we put out more of our Cruise Essentials videos and some of our other adventures here in Living Phase 2. And we would love to have you hit that like button and hit the subscribe.
Thank you, friends. The next thing you need to look at is what cruise line and even what cruise ship you would like to go on. They all have their own unique quirks and personalities. So think about the things that you're going to want in your vacation. Do you want it to be all adult? Or do you want there to be, are you bringing your grandchildren along and you want there to be other kids there with you as well? Or maybe you don't care. Do you want it to be a high-end luxury cruise, or do you want it to be more mainstream? Do you want it to be high energy, or do you want it to be more relaxing? Do you want to spend more days on the ship, more sea days, or do you like those days in port? So those are all things that you need to think about. Do you want a small ship, or like a boutique ship, or do you want a large ship with tons of activities?
Right.
Think about those things here. That's going to be your next decision you're going to need to make.
Exactly. Now you know your budget, you can start narrowing that budget down to the different cruise lines. Let's very quickly touch on a few. There's tons of good information out there, we said, as you're doing your research, but just an overall. Royal Caribbean, Carnival, MSC, Holland America, all of those cruise lines in general are these what we call mainline cruise lines, right? They offer a fairly similar product at a fairly similar price point.
Right.
Now, that said, no, they are not all created equal. Carnival has its own personality versus Royal Caribbean versus Holland America, and that's where you need to look and do a lot of that research, because even though they're all in that kind of same price point, you're going to find the one that's right for you. And what's right for us or what's right for somebody on Facebook or some other YouTube channel may not be right for you. So really do your research and look into those lines about what they offer for you. We happen to be loyal to Royal. We love Royal Caribbean. We love the entertainment. We love the food, the service. They hit a very good price point for what they offer.
Right. We do a lot of activities, and the fact there are a lot of children on Royal Caribbean, but it doesn't bother me because I enjoy, they've got top-end entertainment, which
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoy.
Some of the best in the world.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And they have all adult areas like the solarium and places that you can go and get away from the kids. Now that said, then you have lines like Disney Cruise Line. We set that aside because the cost of Disney, and obviously you're going to have a lot of kids on Disney,
Yes.
but the cost of Disney can be 2, 3, 4 times what you might pay on a Royal Caribbean ship. Then you have something like Virgin Voyages, all adult, but it's got a real kind of new vibe to it. I don't really need to do my yoga and yogurt in the morning. But people love it. Okay, I mean, a wide variety of people do love Virgin Voyages, and they are all adult. That's an option that you have. That's not a crazy price point. That's going to give you an all adult experience. Then you start getting into some of the higher end cruise lines like Azamara, Silver Sea, Seabourn, some of these that are smaller ships, boutique ships that are going to be much more expensive, offer you an amazing level of service, right? But yet you're going to pay for that. So again, do your research, determine on what your budget, and determine the type of vacation that you like to have and what's being offered. And as Nancy said, how many pools are on the ship? How many bars are on the ship? Do they have an all-adult area? What kind of entertainment? What kind of food options? What's included and what's not from a food option? Do they have a main dining room, or is it all split up into, like Celebrity's doing now on some of their ships, they're splitting it up into just restaurants that you go to. Those are all the things that you're going to have to look at. And the final thing when looking at, look at the age of their fleet. Some fleets are getting a little old, especially with COVID. Some cruise companies didn't necessarily keep updating their ships. And you may see a fleet that has the biggest and newest, like, we were just on Wonder of the Seas, the biggest and newest cruise ship in the world, versus, you may get on an older ship on another cruise line or even on Royal Caribbean Know the differences between those ships, because going on Grandeur of the Sea versus Royal Caribbean versus going on Wonder of the Seas is...
They'll all have their own personalities,
Absolutely.
friends.
In fact, we have a video on that, biggest, newest, oldest, and smallest. Take a look at that. That'll give you a real good breakdown of what it's like to cruise on the different types of cruise
But
ships.
that's also why having a travel agent can really help to steer you in the direction that you want to go so you get the best vacation.
Absolutely. So now that we've covered a lot of this, grab your number 2 pencil, as Nancy said, and really, on your phone or on a piece of paper, write down what's important to you. Really think about it and say, okay, here's my budget. I want to have an all-adult area. I want to have great food, but you know what? I don't really care about Broadway shows or, but, I may want really super entertainment, but you know what? I'll eat about anything and the buffet's fine for me. You start looking at that, and then as you start doing your research and watching videos about the different ships, then you're really going to start seeing, oh, wow, maybe Carnival is the type of ship that I want to go on, because you know what? I love the party atmosphere and people who have a lot of camaraderie and get together and have a good time. Or maybe, Holland America is a little more laid back, a little bit older crowd. Those are the kind of things that you're going to learn. But really make that list now based on the things that we've talked about.
The next thing for you to consider, friends, for your budget is destinations and the length of the cruise. So cruises can be anywhere from a 2-day cruise to 274 days
Yes.
for World Cruise.
Yes, that's right.
So there's a wide variety of lengths, and you also need to consider the destination, because destinations, different ones, cost more. Alaska's going to cost more if you're doing a transatlantic or an Asian cruise. That's going to cost more. Your Caribbean is probably going to be your least expensive cruise. So think of the amount of time you want, the length of time you want your vacation, as well as your destination.
Absolutely. So now you have all this data, you have it all written down, you know the type of ship, you kind of know what the personality of the cruise line and the ships that you like, you know where you want to go. Now it's time to look at timing. Yes, timing is one of those things you really want to think about, because there are certain times of the year where you can save a lot of money on your cruise if you book it at the right time. And honestly, there's other times of the year that you may not exactly want to book because of things like spring break. This year we went on Odyssey of the Seas, and we honestly didn't really think about it. We went in March and we hit the peak of spring break, and the ship set the record for the most full that ship had ever been on the week we were on it. That said, we had a great time. I mean, the ships, the way they're laid out, yes, there was a lot of people, but we still had a great time on the ship. But those times of years, like spring break, over Christmas, New Year's cruises, and when kids are out of school, so May through August, those are going to be your high seasons. Right. Look for your shoulder seasons, early December, January,
February,
of those, in February, and you can often get really good deals on cruises at that time. So just be aware of who else is trying to cruise at the time you're cruising.
Right. September, October are a great time to go because kids have just started back to school. Parents don't want to pull their kids out of school right after they've just started. So that's something to think about too.
Exactly. And your ports are still, the southern ports are still really warm at that time.
Yeah.
So great time to go. Well, now that you have all this information all written down in your little notepad, where you have the cruise line that you think is a good fit for you, the ship in that cruise line, your budget, the time of year that you can go, all those things, you've got it all wrapped up. Now it's time to actually get that cruise booked. Whether you work through a travel agent or you book it yourself, we're going to go over that in our next video, because believe it or not, you're not there yet. There's a lot to think about when you go to actually book that vacation that's much beyond just hopping on a website and saying, I'm going to go book a cruise. And in our final video of our 3-part course here, that's what we're going to show you, is all those things you have to think about when that whole vacation comes together. So we hope this has been very helpful, and we'll see you next time when class is back in session here on Living Phase 2.
Thanks for watching, friends. See you next time.